Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Christian Weekly on YouTube. My name is Patrick Dorns. I'll be your host. And I just want to start off by saying thank you for tuning in, whether this is your first time watching or if you are familiar with the Christian Weekly podcast that I did. Um, Welcome. I hope you enjoy. Um, so I want to apologize for not sticking with the podcast. I took an unintentional very long hiatus. I did not intend for that to happen. I just couldn't keep up with it at that point in time, so I decided that I'm going to try YouTube as a different platform. Maybe that would work a little bit better, and I think it'll help me definitely get into the gist of actually putting something together and working on it, because I felt like a lot of my podcast episodes were not very well put together. So I feel if I do YouTube, I'm going to have to take a longer amount of time of researching to make things better. And I think that YouTube would definitely be better because another reason I can visualize and show you guys what I'm talking about exactly. Because with a podcast, it's just audio; you can't see anything. So I think this will work better, and I am doing this on PowerPoint, so that I think that's going to work perfectly. And once again, I'm sorry for taking so long. I'm going to be putting my foremost attention to doing it on YouTube. I'm not completely abandoning my podcast, but it's not something I'm going to be focusing on a whole lot. Yeah, and sorry if the audio is bad. I don't have a very good microphone. I'm using the microphone on my Xbox headset, so sorry if the audio is not all that great. But anyway, this is not a complete restart or reboot of the Christian Weekly. It's just a platform switch, basically. Um, and I'm just picking up with ideas that I wanted to do, which there's going to be a lot that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm still going to be doing the. I know I've talked about a couple times in my podcast doing a video on Mormon doctrine. Um, so I think that's probably going to be the next one. My views on their doctrine in the Book of Mormon. But today I want to focus on something a lot of you are probably familiar with, and if you're not, I'm going to explain it. Um, this is I'm going to call it an ideology. The ideology of King James Onlyism. And if you're not familiar with that, I think the name is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to go into some details about it. So hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would mean a lot if you did. I just want to give a disclaimer. Any pictures you see in this video are not my own. I do not own them. I got these off of YouTube. And this is kind of a first for me in this case, but I am kind of well, I not kind of, I flat out am going to be calling out two uh, pastors. Some of you might be familiar with, and no, it's not Joel Osteen or Benny Hinn. It's not those two. It's two lesser known pastors, I guess, but we'll get to that in a minute. So let's get started. So, and these are all my words as well. Not taken from somebody else. These are mine, but I do have sources for other information on one of the last slides. So, what is King James Onlyism? So, it's the belief held by some Christians that the King James Version, or the KJV if you want to go by abbreviations, also called the Authorized Version, many Christians believe that this is the only reliable English translation of the Bible. Now, there are some Christians who will say that's the only Bible anyone should read. So, it doesn't matter if you speak English, too bad, you got to read the King James. And so, in a lot of places, a lot of people will believe that other translations, so the New King James, the New International, the New International Version, the English Standard Version, the New American Standard Bible. Basically, if it's not the King James Version, they believe it to be a corrupt translation. Then you also have the people who burn the quote-unquote false Bibles, and these are the two I wanted to focus on, these two guys, Stephen Anderson and Jonathan Shelley. So if you don't know, these two guys are part of the New Independent Fundamental Baptist movement. This guy here, Stephen Anderson, is actually the guy who founded it. And so I'm going to start with Anderson here. So Stephen Anderson is the founder of this movement, and he is the pastor of Faithful Word Baptist Church in Tempe, Arizona. Now, this guy, I've watched several of his videos, and several videos people have made of him. And I'm going to tell you, I am not impressed. Now, the new independent fundamental Baptist movement is basically a conservative, biblical, King James only Baptist movement. Now, what that means is, when I mean conservative, they don't believe with like contemporary Christianity. So you have some churches that are more, you got the hymn books, you have the piano, it's more formal. And then you have churches where it's just like more upbeat music, guitars, drum set, that kind of thing. So basically, you just picture your standard First Congregational Church versus like Hillsong. These new independent fundamental Baptists, they're a lot more hardcore to it, to a point where almost, actually not almost, they are kind of hateful. Not kind of, they are hateful. Stephen Anderson, there's a lot of videos up on YouTube about him. A lot of the ones I've seen, um, he's not showing love. And for somebody who believes that the King James is the only error-free translation of the Bible, he does not follow it. He is a hypocrite. Um, yeah. Oh, geez, where do I want to go with him? Um, in one video I watched, he was talking about how homosexuality should be punishable by death. He actually made the statement that if you're a homosexual, you should basically just put a bullet through your head so you don't molest his kids. That's what he said. Um, he said no homosexuals would ever be allowed in his church as long as he was the pastor. So you can kind of tell where this guy is going. He makes fun of people. He's hateful. I don't remember who he was talking about in one video, but he said that he hoped the guy died and burned and went to hell because he was like a scumbag, or I don't remember his exact words, but that was basically it. So yeah, Stephen Anderson, not somebody I would recommend looking up to. I linked his website's a belief page basically in one of the last slides. I'll get to that in a minute. But that's Stephen Anderson. Now I want to talk about Jonathan Shelley, who's basically same as this dude, but in my opinion, a little bit worse. And I linked his church's doctrine page in a link on one of the last slides, and it goes over false teachings, and one of them he had a list of oh geez, what was the word, sins? How was I forgetting that? I'm sorry, I can't talk today, guys. That was a list of sins that the Bible claims should be punishable by death by the government, basically, which included homosexuality, adultery, murder, rape, which a lot of that today is actually by secular government punishable by death. Rape, murder, homosexuality is not. However, I think it's kind of funny because his website even says that we are not. It was either his or it was Anderson's website. I think it was Jonathan Shelley's website. It said how that um, the New Testament basically changed the law of the Old Testament unless it was not specifically stated. Now, I beg to differ that that the entire New Testament did in a lot of ways cancel out the old law. I mean, in terms of homosexuality, that is still wrong. However, execution, that is, you don't do that anymore. We look back to the Pharisees took women outside the gates of the city were going to stone her, and they challenged Jesus and said, what are we to do with this woman? I think she might have been an adulteress. I don't remember exactly. I don't remember what book it was in, but you probably know what I'm talking about. Jesus said, "He who's without sin cast the first stone." I think we know what he meant when it was about execution. So no, and he said even love your neighbor as you'd love yourself. So how exactly are we loving our neighbor if we're executing them for something? That's not. So yeah, but what I really want to talk about with Jonathan Shelley was not that specifically. If you want to check out that page, I linked that too. But what I really want to talk about and call him out for is Bible burning. Now, basically, he'll take every Bible he can find that is not a King James version, um, select, 2 or 3 verses, say why it's corrupt, and then pitch that Bible into a burning fire. I watched him burn a New International, a New King James, a New American Standard Bible. Okay, it was basically him just misinterpreting verses. That, or he knew what it meant and just didn't care. Which was sad though, because there was a bunch of kids around. So that's indoctrination right there. And so, however, what I would like to say, and if any of you are Jonathan Shelley fans, let me ask you this: if you were a King James Onlyist, if the King James version of 1611 is the perfect error-free translation of the Word of God, why did it undergo 4 revisions? Why did it go under 4 revisions? The last revision it had was in 1768, I believe. There were 4 revisions. So if it's error-free, please explain that. I'm just going to say, I'm not condemning usage. If you only want to use the King James version, that's up to you. I use the King James, but I use other translations as well. So if you want to stick to your King James version, that's fine, but at least be open to what others have to say, and don't burn false Bibles. Or excuse me, don't burn other translations is what I mean. Okay? The only Bible I can think of that you should burn is the Message translation. That is a corrupt version. So I'd burn that one definitely, but any other one, don't do that. You know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I just wanted to take a couple minutes there, talk about these guys, and they really are part of that hardcore King James only group. I think they purposely misinterpret verses in there. Stephen Anderson even said New International Version readers are probably not saved. So didn't want to take that much time on calling these two out, but it needed to happen. So moving on. So now I have a short history of the King James Version of the Bible and how it came to be. So basically, it started off due to a religious division between the Church of England, which is the Anglican Church, and Puritans, which is part of the Protestant Reformation, a later group. Now we have King James I of England here. So he took over the throne of England after I believe it was his cousin who died, and he became King James I of England. And so this guy right here, John Reynolds, is a Puritan, trying to get things, figured out between his group and the Church of England. And so John Reynolds believed in, instead of having a hierarchy, so whoever's ruling England, the king, queen, whatever, is essentially the head of the Church of England. So it's kind of like how the Pope is the head of the Catholic Church everywhere. King of England was the head of the Anglican Church, or Church of England. So John Reynolds did not agree with that. He thought we were supposed to have a presbytery, which is essentially a board of elders. That's where we get our Presbyterian church from, rule of elders. And so they're called presbyters. So basically, he was essentially a form of Presbyterian, but obviously King James didn't like that. But one of the main points was John Reynolds wanted a new translation of the Bible. So he believed that the prior translations, which included the Tyndale Bible, which was, if you didn't know, that was William Tyndale's translation, You have the Geneva Bible. Now, I don't remember if Tyndale came first or if Geneva came first. I don't remember exactly, but if you know, leave it in the comments, please. We have the Coverdale Bible, the Matthew Bible, the Great Bible, and the Bishop's Bible. He viewed those all as corrupt versions. So James actually did like this idea because um, he was against what he considered to be the Geneva Bible's sometimes revolutionary marginal notes, which, you're a king, you don't want revolution, you want to stay in power, you know? So, so with that, he commissioned that this new Bible be created in 1604, and the King James Version was published in 1611. So that is where we get our King James from. So problems with King James Onlyism. Okay, first off, we all know it's not the only good translation for all Christians, okay? Personally, I was saved through the New International Version, and that was the 2011 copyright, which I know not a lot of people are fond of, but I was saved through that version. So, just because the King James might be good for you doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good for someone else, You have someone who's the King James Version is set at a 12th grade reading level. The New International, for example, is set at a 7th grade reading level. So someone who's not at a 12th grade reading level yet, is not exactly going to have a good time trying to understand or they're not going to have an easy time understanding the King James, especially with all the these and thous and all that, which I understand them. So it's no problem for me. Now, take someone else, younger kid, they're not going to understand. You hand them or for example, brand new believers, if they don't know much about Christianity or that, what good is handing them a King James Bible going to do? They're not going to understand anything because they never read out of it before. Now, a lot of people who are King James only will be like, oh, well, that's not a good excuse. Well, yeah, it is. Because some people just do not have a very good, how do I put this without being a jerk? Um, some people have a lower reading level than others, okay? Some people have a higher one, some people have a lower one. That's just how it is. And I do agree that reading the King James for a good period of time, it'll get easier. But if you want to stick with something simple, then yeah, the New International or the English Standard Version. I've never read that one. I don't have this one here. I have a couple different translations. I want to get my hands on an English Standard Version, but you know there are some translations are good for some people, some are better for others. So then we have my next point. It's not the only reliable translation in English. Okay, so that kind of goes in with my first point here. There are other newer versions that are much more accurate. Um, for example, English Standard Version and I believe the New International Version. Um, I'm going to tie this point in here. Textus Receptus. That means received text. That's what the King James was based off of. Was received text. That's what they had to work with. And from what I understand, the translators who were translating the King James Version, the Aramaic and Hebrew of the Old Testament, that was fine. Now, the New Testament was written in Koine Greek, which they did not know very well at this point in time. So, you go to your newer Bibles, such as the ESV, which a lot of that was created from the Dead Sea Scrolls. A lot of verses that are found in the King James or the New King James are not found in the newer translations. The manuscripts used for the newer translations are actually older, so they're closer to time Jesus walked the earth. However, just because manuscripts are older does not necessarily make them more accurate. The only way we are ever going to have a perfect Bible, a perfect translation, is if we are able to find the original manuscripts. Okay, but I doubt we're ever going to find them. They're either locked away in some catacomb somewhere we're never going to be able to find, or they're deteriorating somewhere, you know? Fun fact about the Dead Sea Scrolls, part of the Apocrypha, or if you're Catholic, Deuterocanonical books, part of those were actually found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, whether that makes them inspired scripture or not, I don't know. Um, all Catholic Bibles are going to have the Apocrypha. The ESV now has a version with the Apocrypha. The King James version, you can get that with the Apocrypha. I've heard rumors of a New International with Apocrypha. I don't know how accurate that information is, so don't quote me there. So, and I actually want to make one more point here with not the only good translation for Christians. Like I said in the other slide, the two slides before, a lot of King James Onlyists believe that every Christian should read the King James. Well, what if you don't speak English? Okay, what if you speak Spanish or German or Japanese or of some other foreign language? English is, if you're a foreigner, if you don't speak English, it's one of the hardest languages to learn. It's not like Spanish. I took Spanish in 1 year in high school, and it was easy. It was super easy. Now English, it changes so much. It's not an easy language to learn. So there is that. Outdated language, and I'm going to tie archaic words into this. Obviously, we don't use thee or thou anymore. I mean, every once in a while, I'll be like, well, I'm saying the Our Father, I'll say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. That's just how I learned it, so I say that. And I really only use like thee and thou, like if I'm reading King James Bible. That's the only time I really do it. Or if I'm like sending a text or whatever, and I'm just trying to be goofy, like, tell me when thou shalt arrive or something like that. Um, but yeah, so outdated language, archaic words, just words that we no longer use. I already covered Textus Receptus, and then you have revisions, and I made that point in 2 slides ago. I was talking about Stephen Anderson and Jonathan Shelley. Okay, there was a total of 4 revisions to the King James Version. One of those revisions happened actually due to a misprint. It was with one of the 10 Commandments. It was "Thou shalt not commit adultery." I believe it was that verse there, that commandment. It was misprinted to say "Thou shalt commit adultery." So that any translation of the King James where it has that misprint, fun fact here, it's called the Wicked Bible. So yeah, I don't know how many of those are actually still around anymore, but that revision, I don't know what year that revision is. If I remember correctly, revisions happened in after 1611. Revisions happened in 1629, 1637, 1762, and 1768 or 1769. I want to say, but I think it was those 4 years. Thomas Nelson claims that the New King James Version is the 5th revision, but I would honestly say it's its own Bible. It's a Bible on its own. But that's up for debate. But yeah, so if you're going to say that the King James is the error-free Word of God that has been translated to English, well, it obviously was not perfect if it had to have revisions. Okay? 421 words were changed, if I remember correctly. 421 words. Okay? If your so-called perfect Bible had to have 4 revisions, well, guess what? It wasn't perfect. Okay? God's words are perfect, but a Bible, a translation will never be perfect. It's just different ways of doing God's word. And some translation philosophies are not good. Some are, some aren't, but that's besides the point. So, and like I said earlier, I'm not condemning King James only usage. If you want to only use your King James Bible, that's fine. But don't bash people for using other translations, because if you don't know what you're talking about, then you shouldn't be arguing it. So, the question is the King James Bible still a reliable translation? And I would say yes, because it is still giving Christ's message. If you're saved through the King James Bible, that's great. If you're saved through the New International or the English Standard or another translation, that's awesome. That's what counts. I mean, yeah, we should still keep away from actual corrupt translations like the Message Bible. But other than that, almost every other Bible I know of is fine. Excuse me. And 400 years later, hey, it is still the most popular Bible next to the New International, which is brought out by Zondervan. And you know what? I'm going to be honest, all Bibles are going to have their issues. I mean, some translation philosophies are good, some are bad. The King James is a word for word translation, just like the English Standard Version and the New King James. Whereas you have the New International Version, which is more of a thought for thought. So it still focuses closely to the original word for word meaning, but it does sacrifice some of the original wording to get the actual meaning across, which I'm not a huge fan of that myself, but it can be helpful for some people. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan, and I'd rather stick word to word. But if you want to read a thought for thought translation, as long as it gets real close to the original manuscripts or the manuscripts we have, the original wording, then that's fine. So my concluding thoughts here, still one of the most popular Bibles, and people still use this translation even though it's old. Me personally, it's almost poetic. It's as long as the world spins, the King James version of the Bible is a literary English masterpiece, and that's what it's always going to be. And Bible say they're all going to have their pros and cons, but as long as it still delivers the gospel of Jesus Christ, that's what's important. That's what counts. So, but yeah, that's really the best way I could sum it up. I mean, as long as you're not using like the Message Bible, you're fine. I guess I'm not sure about because Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, did make his own King James version. I don't really know much about that, but it happened. So, but that'll be a topic for the Mormon video. So here are my sources that I used, and give credit to these websites. Now these two down here, the top one here, this one is the one for Stephen Anderson's church. This bottom one is for Steadfast Baptist. That is Jonathan Shelley's. So this one and this one, those are the two I want you guys to look at and see what I'm talking about. Read through some of the stuff they have. Find some of their sermons online. Now, some of the stuff on their belief list and doctrines and stuff, I do agree with. Some of their stuff is right on track, but also a lot of it is completely wrong and anti-biblical. Honestly, in my, I pray to God that these two men find in their hearts to analyze what they're doing wrong and to come back to Jesus. But in all honesty, if they don't stop, I think they don't deserve the title of pastor. And it's kind of sad too, because I saw a video with Steven Anderson's, and he was ripping on homosexuals like nonstop. Like obviously, I don't agree with homosexuality. I believe that God strictly made it marriage between one man and one woman. However, that doesn't mean we're supposed to discriminate against anyone who is not straight. Jesus said, love your neighbor as you'd love yourself. Well, our neighbors aren't just our fellow Christians. It's people who have different religions, people who are not heterosexual, people with different skin color. That's just how it is. That's what God said, and as long as I'm alive, I'm gonna live by that. And everyone should. But you have Steven Anderson and he's preaching to his congregation, and they're all agreeing with him, saying amen and clapping and all this. And um, I'm not gonna put it on the level of Westboro Baptist because I don't associate with them with Jesus at all. They're a cult, but I don't want to say Steven Anderson's church is up on that level, but I fear it's getting close. Same with Jonathan Shelley's if they're going to be doing that kind of stuff. So just pray for them that they can get back on the right track. And as Christians, we're supposed to hold each other accountable, and if that requires us to call them out on stuff, that's what we've got to do. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Really does mean a lot. So if you want to have some updates, you want to see updates on what's going on, you can follow us on Instagram at the Christian Weekly, and you can follow my personal account right here, pdorrance_43. Those are both for Instagram. If you have any questions or video ideas, you can email me here at thechristianweekly2020 at gmail.com. So I just want to thank you guys for watching. It means a lot. Um, and what I think we're gonna be doing, it's Friday today, so I think what we're gonna be doing is I want to try and at least do like two, well not two, maybe just one video a week. I do it on Friday. If I feel like I can do two, then I will. But I think for right now, it's just gonna be one every Friday. Um, Times, we're not sure. I will get back to you guys on that, but other than that, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you like the video. If you have any questions or anything, like I said, email me, direct message me, leave a comment in the comment section below. God bless you guys. Have a great day.